Thank you for joining me for this another virtual show of I Want to Know, the show dedicated to government, how it works, and the people involved in its operation. I'm very fortunate to have Vincent Candelora joining me today for another show. He's represents the 86th General Assembly District, which is North Branford, Northford, Guilford, Durham, Wallingford, and he's also Deputy Republican Leader, correct, sir?
Yep.
And it's been, the last time we saw each other was right at the beginning of this COVID pandemic. And it's been kind of a difficult time for everybody. Last week, you guys had a marathon session. You probably put in, I don't know, 140 hours in the matter of 2 days or close.
Yeah.
And there's, a lot for you guys to do, a lot on the table. We only have a half an hour, so, we have police accountability to discuss, capping insulins, ballots, absentee ballots, telehealth coverage, school openings, how that's going to be funded, how is that going to work, and the state coffers, which is kind of a odd, good story. So if you could tell me a little bit about your experience last week.
Sure. Yeah. The special session was it was a little bit odd because we socially distanced. Everyone stayed in their offices. I did go into the chamber. We had only a few people that stayed in the chamber, maybe about 10 of us. So it was very odd not having all your colleagues in the chamber with you. They were all in their offices, and we would have to communicate via phone, emailing, texting. Overall, I don't think it was a good process. It was a necessary process, but I don't think it was helpful in crafting legislation because, frankly, I think when everybody's in the room and we're all talking and conversing, I think we do better work. So there was a lot of confusion that went on, but ultimately, some of these bills that were done, I think were good bills. What we did with the telehealth bill is currently right now, doctors could see you via the internet. So they can pick up the phone and talk to you on the phone. They could also view you on a screen for all different types of services, ranging from, podiatrists to dentists to chiropractors, and then your MDs as well. This bill allows for the doctors to bill the insurance companies. So they're able to get parity as if you had an in-house doctor's visit.
Right.
And that's going to be extended through March 15th because we still need to use this remote system of practicing medicine. The insulin bill, which was an important measure, is capping insulin costs in a nutshell to $100 across the board.
Per month? Is that per month?
Per month.
Okay.
And the negative, and I think that it did garner a few no votes. And to be fair, I think the reason why people were against the bill is that it's spreading the cost out among all the other insurance payers. So it is sort of socializing insulin costs as opposed to putting it back onto the manufacturers.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So this was the compromise bill.
That is kind of how insurance works, though. I mean, if my house burns down, kind of everybody's covering, those costs. I mean, that's how it works, essentially. So
that's right. And so that's why most of us did support the legislation. But for those that didn't, they really would have rather had it be pushed back on the manufacturers. And obviously, I think it's something we have to look at is the obscene profits that are in medicine. Because that really does drive up a lot of the costs. But that bill, I think, was an important bill to pass. And then we did pass an absentee ballot provision for people to vote under COVID in the November election. And that passed widely on bipartisan support. The big hiccup that people are really arguing over are those drop boxes by the town hall. How secure are they? And then also the mailing of the absentee ballots. As we're seeing in the primary, there are a lot of towns that still have not received their ballots who requested them. And the Secretary of State is using a mail vendor who's responsible for 250,000 ballots throughout Connecticut. and a lot of them aren't getting out. So you're going to see that in the news over the next couple of days. It's kind of hot off the press. It's not working. So
the vendor is not capable of that volume.
they're not. They actually, and so one thing I'm proud of is I actually ran an amendment that was accepted in the legislature, which puts the same requirements on the mail vendor that we have on the town clerk's office. That being, when you receive an application, you have to turn a ballot around within a couple of hours.
I see.
Sorry, a couple of days.
Yeah.
We, in an amendment that I proposed and we passed, that mail vendor is going to have that same requirement. Right now, for the primary, they don't. So they're allowed to sit on these things until August 10th, if they wanted to.
Right. Will there still be in-person voting if somebody chooses to go to the normal polling place? Will there be access? Okay.
Yes, there'll still be in-person voting. So we'll see how it goes. Frankly, with the way the primary ballots are going, as many people that could vote at the polls it might be better, because this is really a problem. I know North Branford, we have not received a single ballot yet.
Right. Okay, well, that's kind of a problem because I mailed mine in 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so let me know when you get it.
Sure. Okay, so then if the voter or the town does not receive the information, how do we find out? And then how can we then go in person if we desire to? Like, how does that equate itself? And then how is my mail-in ballot negated?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a problem. Under current law, you can go into the town clerk's office and rescind your AB ballot.
Okay.
Because the ballot has not yet been received by the town clerk.
Right.
They don't really have that ability. And they also don't have the ability to take you off the voter roll to show that you voted. So
okay,
it's really a problem for them. And they're struggling with it right now.
Because it's going to just add a tremendous amount of time to see if people have, voted inadvertently twice or not at all. I mean, that's a pretty complicated situation.
Yeah, and I think, for the primary, at least for North Branford, it's uncontested. So this is almost a trial run for us.
Right.
But there are some cities like Bridgeport that have a state Senate primary and state rep primaries where this is very impactful. It's
not like they haven't had their problems before.
Right. So I'm going to guess you're going to see lawsuits coming out of the August primaries in at least Bridgeport.
Sure. Hartford is another one.
Yeah, that's my prediction.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's comforting.
Yeah.
School, I want to touch briefly on schools. Is there any direction from the state at this point, or is it all on the superintendents to develop plans? And then, I will also want to understand if towns were receiving funding for mandated procedures and products that we have to purchase, or is that an unfunded mandate? How are the superintendents handling it?
So the towns right now haven't had any funding committed to them. So it's sort of an unfunded mandate. They have to address it on their own. The state of Connecticut has CARES Act funding, which we are planning to go back into special session in early September. And that is going to be a topic of conversation, at least for me, that I think our schools should be receiving some of that CARES Act funding, which is supposed to be used to offset expenses for this COVID pandemic and dealing with it. Because there's a lot of physical plant changes that need to be done, supplies need to be purchased. Our towns are going to need some of that funding. And so that's something that I am going to push for in this upcoming September session.
And we're going to have to ramp up a lot of purchases like PPE, sanitizing equipment, additional cleaning of the building. Right. So is there direction from the state as to how kids should attend school, if they should attend school? Is it still numbers dependent because we're inside of a month of opening?
The state is leaving it up to the school systems. And I think what you're seeing right now is a tug of war between the Connecticut Education Association, which is the largest teachers union, who's pushing back on the reopening, So the governor's really stepped away and is leaving it up to the local communities. North Branford has AFT as their union. So we're not seeing a lot of pushback in North Branford necessarily. And I think, of course, we all love our teachers and they're very committed. I think we're trying to work through this. So, because distance learning is really a problem. The state isn't going to say it, but it didn't work as well as we think. There's large numbers of children that never logged in since March for classes.
Right.
It impacts people socioeconomically. The wealthier communities, they can hire tutors to tutor their kids. Other children are going to fall behind. So they're really struggling with figuring out how to get kids back into the classroom. One comforting piece of information I got from the Connecticut Hospital Association, they did talk about the research in Europe, and they're finding that children are very poor transmitters of the virus, and that the schools aren't having problems with transmission. So at least I know I read a study, 12 and under should be fine. So I think we're at least going to see those populations. It's going to be pretty safe to return to school.
The good news is that the state in general is doing really quite well compared to how we were in the beginning of March when it was a frightening situation. What have we learned that we did correctly so far to keep transmission, to kind of keep the transmission rates lower? And what do you think we're looking at long term to stick with?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, we were very slow at reopening the state. I think we might have been able to reopen a couple of weeks sooner than we did. But I think the difference is really, you look at the residents and they've been pretty vigilant. So people are washing their hands and wearing masks. And, we debate over whether or not masks are effective or not. I'd rather find out in the end that I wore a mask and I was wrong, I didn't need to, versus not wearing a mask and finding out in the end
the hard way.
You should have,
Right.
So that's sort of my position, and I think a lot of people feel that way. They hate wearing them, but they're going to keep wearing them, and I think that has an impact on the lack of spread in Connecticut. The other piece is, we didn't open up our bars. It's one thing to go and sit down and eat at a restaurant. But when you're in a bar situation, if there's loud music and you're shouting at each other, you're aerosoling the virus. And I think that's why you're seeing so much spread. And we're seeing it in that younger population, the 20 to 35 population, that are really responsible for this spread. Even in Connecticut, the little blip we've had, it seems to be coming out of that younger population because they are going to Block Island and hitting the bar scenes that are open.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's face it, they drink and they yell.
Right.
So what do you think is going to happen? And so the state is, also modified, you can, when you pick up food, you can pick up alcohol, drink your alcohol at home. I don't know, bars don't really have a choice if they're not selling food though, I presume.
Correct. And they're impacted. There are industries that are not, that are impacted dramatically. There are businesses that are going to go under and not come back, and it's scary. I struggle with my own business. I don't know what the fall and winter is going to bring for us.
Right.
And so we're just treading very carefully and hoping that people do behave. So we, and do everything they can to stop the spread. So we don't end up in a situation where we have to shut down again. It's going to be catastrophic.
Another key to opening up the economy gradually is daycare. Yeah. Our daycare is able to open now at less than full capacity, or how is that working?
Yeah, they are opening. My wife works at a daycare and has been in that field, and they are all opening up slowly, and some people are coming back, some aren't. Again, they seem to be successful. The younger population doesn't seem to be a spreader or easily acquiring the virus. So far, we have not seen large outbreaks in daycare. So that's been going well, and hopefully it'll stay that way.
Good. Hopefully, the adults stay healthy, and then the kids, as you're saying, hopefully are not good transmitters of this.
Right.
So they're left unharmed. Did you want to, before we get into the police accountability, which is really the big elephant in the room, did you want to talk about the state coffers? And
yeah, I'll briefly touch on it. We have about $2.5 billion in our savings account. And you're hearing right now that revenues are better and the deficit is shrinking. I don't want to be negative, but people need to understand that that deficit and the state coffers are the 2020 budget. So it was last year's budget because we delayed income tax payments from April. So that budget ended on June 30th. So the revenue that's coming in right now is actually for last year's budget. It is filling up the deficit. So I think it's down to about 62 million. This year, however, we're still faced with a $2 billion plus budget deficit. So we do have our work cut out for us, but it's better than nothing. So we brought in about $300 million than we anticipated right now. And hopefully that growth will continue.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's generated largely from the income tax receipts. Is that it, or?
It's largely generated from the stock market. So we're still seeing our sales taxes are down. The corporate taxes are staying, steady, but withholding is going to be down because of the layoffs. So it's mainly because our stock market has still performed pretty well. And most of this revenue is as of December 31st, 2019.
I
so
see.
All those earnings came in well before the pandemic.
I see. Okay. So then we really don't know what the true effect of this will be for quite some time. And then unemployment, what is the unemployment rate of the state right now?
I don't know where it is right now. I mean, it was upward of, I think, 20%. We haven't had updated numbers, so I don't really want to guess.
Right. Well, it's certainly way higher than it was 6 months ago.
But I know based on the emails I'm getting, people are still trying to collect, and there's still issues there. So
I can assure you there is. I'm living that right now. 6 weeks now. So tough times. There's so many unresolved issues pre-pandemic. We were talking about tolls. That was the big debate 6 months ago. Infrastructure, all this other stuff. How do you guys kind of work your way up in Hartford, work your way into those long-term issues that are unresolved? I mean, it just, this is just an unplanned pile on for everybody.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, I think it's why we've seen so many retirements in the legislature this year. It's going to be very painful. Those of us that have been here long enough understand how bad it really is going to be. And it's going to take some cooperative work. And I think Connecticut has always been a little bit better about working bipartisan and cooperatively. We do have our issues where we split, like we saw at the Police Accountability Bill. But we at least try to get there. Even on that bill, we worked for months together trying to get a bipartisan product. So the communication is going to be important on both sides. And, we've pledged to each other in the leadership that we're going to try to keep that spirit going. Right.
That's how we get things done.
Yeah.
And hopefully keep the vitriol out of the picture as much as possible. It's unproductive.
Right.
So to that question, though, you guys were in session 2 weeks ago now. The Senate was in session this week, right? Am I right about that?
We were in on the 23rd. They were in on the 28th.
Yeah. Okay. So a week apart. Is that conducive to collaboration and conversation when you guys are not in at the same time? I mean, when it comes to these bills?
Right. So that was solely because of COVID. So all four caucuses in both chambers worked together. We went in on separate days because we wanted to limit the number of people in the building at the same time.
Okay.
So that was the only reason why that had happened.
Assuming this COVID-19 situation is going to be around for a while, are you going to be able to modify how that works so then you can? I mean, the capacity is the capacity, I guess. So the building's only so big, so I don't know how you work around that.
So what happened with special session, which I envision might keep happening, is the building was, while we were in there voting, lobbyists couldn't be in the room. They couldn't be in the building. The public wasn't in the building. Staff was not allowed to come into the chamber. It was just the elected officials.
Okay.
So it was a real skeleton crew. I imagine that's going to continue in some way, shape, or form. It is not ideal. It's not good.
No, sure.
So the quicker we could get away from this, the better, but we don't have a choice right now.
Right.
And we're going to have to keep tweaking it and see how we can make it better under the new world of COVID.
Right, right. And hopefully everybody stays healthy. That's the key.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's touch on this police accountability bill. It is an omnibus bill, which would probably be really hard to wrap your head around. And it touches on many things. It touches on police identification, probably 30 or 40 different topics. And, it's been a concern of mine because it has become so partisan. I mean, I'm, on Facebook and on social media, it is just devolved around a lot of name calling, which I find to be hurtful and unproductive. And, I think, a lot of the discussion is either you're pro-police, anti-police, pro-citizen, anti-citizen, when at the end of the day, police are citizens, citizens are citizens, we're all a part of this. So can you help kind of clarify, you're just as aware as I am, where the misinformation may be, maybe where the vitriol is being generated from, and hopefully.
I mean, the first thing that we see that I really don't like, and I try to say this all the time, focus on the issues, not the person.
Mm-hmm.
We always go after the people behind the messages, and we really should just focus on the actual language of the document, because that's how we can make it better. Going after people, it just isn't helpful. So that's just my first comment. I think that bill is a victim of COVID, because if police officers, the Chiefs Association, if we had a proper process where they were in the room and we had dialogue, we would have had a better product. And I think that people that voted for that bill probably already have buyer's remorse. I think people didn't realize the problems with it. I think being an attorney is helpful because I can understand the impact of the language and how it works. Chief Halloran is a great communicator, and so we talked about the bill and he helped me understand it a lot better. But bottom line, I think a couple of areas that are problematic is one, that it prohibits the police officers from consent searches of a motor vehicle. So if an individual gets pulled over and they say, "Can I search your car?" If the person says yes, you can't search it. That's just a problem because we find so many things. If there's an Amber Alert, how do they search a car if they think that there's a child that's in the trunk?
If it's a matching description.
Right. So those are the problems with the bill. I think that's an unintended consequence. The other piece of this is over the qualified immunity. People are going to debate it, whether we got rid of it or we didn't. But the reality is what that legislation did is right now you can sue a cop in federal court under federal law. And under federal law, there's qualified immunity, which is a protection for the officer against frivolous lawsuits. And it's a high standard. You could sue a cop if he beat you up without any provocation. That would probably win in court and they would not be immune from it. What this legislation did is it created a state cause of action. So now you can sue in state court for any violation under Article 1 of the Constitution. So it's essentially any conduct that the police officer commits, whether he thinks he's doing it innocently or he's doing it because he believes he's trying to save somebody or be helpful and he's wrong.
That was my question: is it a qualifier whether an officer is willfully violating somebody's civil rights or not? You're right.
No, it's unqualified. So the lawsuit can be brought even if there's a subjective belief that what he was doing was okay, because this law provides an objective standard.
Okay.
So it's not what the cop thought, it's what an objective police officer would think.
Or what a jury may think.
Yeah, and it really does open up the state of Connecticut to a lot of lawsuits. And that's why people are so upset. And I really don't think people that voted for the bill understood what that was doing. And if that goes forward, towns have said it's going to cost about $30,000 per officer per insurance.
So it's because the towns are already cover insurance for officers. So the insurance rates are going to go up?
Yes, because we created a new cause of action. So North Branford could see a lawsuit every day, 365 days a year because of this legislation. And it's not, and that's why the insurance companies are saying it's going to cost you X amount of money. So it could cost a town like ours upward of $500,000 for insurance. The other piece of this bill puts forth a certification process, which also requires the physical plant to be certified. So in North Branford, we are debating building a new police station. This bill would require that we build a new police station in order to get certified, because right now we don't meet those standards. That was something I think people didn't realize when they passed the bill. The last piece, which I really have scratched my head over, it prohibits getting surplus military property for free from the government. And everyone focuses on the tanks and militarizing our government, but they don't realize most of the equipment that we get is not for arresting people. That equipment is used for life-saving measures. So we get night vision goggles in order to search for somebody who might have wandered off at night or are lost. We get rescue boats for people that are drowning in Long Island Sound. We might get some kind of heavy equipment. In North Haven last year, when we had that individual that barricaded himself in the house and blew up the house,
right?
They were able to save people using that military equipment. So I wish the legislation sort of prohibited it for arrest, but allows it for life-saving. That bill banned it altogether, and it was just crazy to me.
That's the problem with the omnibus situation, right? Like it's all encompassing and all wrapped up into one. So where is the bill? How does the bill stand now?
So the bill has passed the Senate and it's awaiting the governor's desk for signature.
Okay. What is go ahead.
My prediction, the governor's going to sign it. And my prediction is he's probably going to wait until toward the end of August to sign it into law. And then you're going to see the legislature go back in and fix the legislation.
Okay.
That will be my prediction. I could be wrong, but I think that may be where they end up going.
If he were not to sign it, is that the process it would take also? Like if he doesn't sign it, he sends it back to you, modify it, and then bring it back to me? Or does that change?
Voted, the bill would be dead. We would have to decide whether or not to override the veto. And that would take, I think, 2/3, which they would not have 2/3 vote.
Right. Okay. 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 We did pretty good. Not bad for 28 minutes. Was there anything in the bill that you liked that if it were not balled up, what did you like about it?
There was a lot of stuff in the bill we liked. There's additional mental health treatment for officers. There's additional certification for police officers and state police officers. There's additional training for the officers. There's a review process to get the bad cops off the street. So there were a lot of good things that were in that bill. There's only a few really bad provisions. It's a 75-page bill. If we could have changed 4 or 5 provisions, you probably would have had an almost unanimous vote in the assembly.
Wow, I wish that were the case.
The Democrats didn't want to fix it, and now I'm guessing they're going to go back and fix what we wanted to fix all along.
Okay, hopefully that does happen and we can get much more bipartisan support. All right, well, we're at the end of the show. Thank you so much for doing this once again. Of course, I appreciate your time and I appreciate your effort. And let's do this again soon. The issue, there's no shortage of stuff to talk about.
No, it's constant. So I'd be happy to do it again.
All right, thanks a lot, Ben.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. That was Vincent Candelora representing A6 District, and this was I Want to Know, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you.